With us to take a look through this morning's papers are Tania, Bryer and Johnny Gould. And Tania, we're going to pick up with our exclusive report on these details that have been uncovered about IS fighters. A lot of the papers following our lead this morning.
Front page of the Times. I mean, what a breakthrough this is. It's incredible. I mean, not only does it give us an insight into their minds, what they're thinking, but who they're recruiting. And that is absolutely key, because if we can find out the type of people, why they're recruiting them, how they're recruiting them, then hopefully that will prevent others from being radicalised. And the details they go into is quite fascinating. They even have a place for your date of birth and time of death as well. I mean, very grim details, but an incredible breakthrough into understanding Islamic State, how they're working, and a huge asset into the fight against them.
Understanding IS, but also, Johnny, probably quite useful in catching a lot of these people, because it's, you know, the people involved are from around 55 countries, a lot of British jihadists as well, their details in there. So in terms of catching some of these people who have returned to their native countries, this is going to prove very useful.
And that's it. People who return can cause the horrors that we saw in Paris. The organisation that took that on, the threat to Brussels that we all felt a few days later that, thank goodness, didn't transpire. The detail is so breathtaking and so diverse. It highlights, I think, the front line that we are all on in every country in the West, and that if we're complacent because there's been nothing happening recently since Paris, we should think again.
Johnny, let's move on to the EU. Everybody's having their say on it, including Vladimir Putin.
If we thought that plugging the migrant problem with £4.7 billion to Turkey was going to solve matters, think on, because migrants will come through Russia. And there has been data coming in the last 3 or 4 months which says that people are arriving in the European Union via the Russian border, and now it's time for the European Union to deal with Vladimir Putin, who I would say, given his track record, is a bit more tough to deal with than the Turkish government, who want to be propped up with European money, who want to be part of the European Union. The bargaining with Russia, who don't want to be part of the European Union, who want to actually physically be outside of it, who are a separate power bloc, will be a completely different matter altogether.
Isn't this all rather strange, given the fact that not that long ago there were a number of people pointing out that perhaps, you know, Vladimir Putin was stoking the flames in Syria in order to stoke the migrant crisis?
That's right, and send more over. What's interesting, because Angela Merkel, of course, who's had the open door policy, she has local elections on Sunday, and I think a lot of people feel in Germany, how is it going to reflect? What's going to happen really with her? Are her party going to turn against her because of her open door policy?
Tania, a story in The Independent. It seems that we're going to be seeing a nicer, softer Donald Trump in this final leg of the race for the
well, that would be something, wouldn't it? A nicer, softer Trump, yes. Well, I think he's finally realising that he has to court the Republican Party, because, of course, he has to win them over. Mitt Romney came out and said, as the leading Republican, no, we cannot have this man representing us. To win over the Republican delegates, he now has to court them, be nice to them. And even though he's winning, he's changed his rhetoric and he's becoming softer. He's actually saying things that aren't too detrimental, and realising if he is going to become the Republican candidate for the President of the United States, he's going to have to tone it down. And another story Sarah Jane and I saw in the Daily Mail about Trump, there's something called Trump anxiety. People are going to their doctors, they can't sleep because they're so worried that he's going to end up in the White House, that they're lying awake at night imagining it.
Well, that's why you have the right to vote. You can change things. Johnny, in the Mirror, and this is a story we covered on Sunrise yesterday when the story broke about the death of Sir George Martin, the fifth Beatle.
What a genius Sir George Martin was. And when you think about Love Me Do and Please Please Me in 1962, and then you think about Tomorrow Never Knows in something like 1967, 68, you think about the massive journey the Beatles took, and they could have only taken it with this man. And I want to sort of take this down to 2 bars out of In My Life, which is a beautiful song about John Lennon's loss in his life, about the people who are dead, who are living, and You know, the guy experienced a lot of life in his 40 years, and this was written when he was 26. And there's a beautiful little sort of what appears to be a little Bach piano concerto, which wasn't actually a Bach piano concerto. It was something that George Martin said, I know, I'm going to do something which sounds a little bit like Bach, and pop it in, right? But not only that, it wasn't a clavichord or a harpsichord, it was a sped-up piano. So he popped that in, he made up his own Bach concerto, and that, in that 2 bars, sums up his production and musical genius. And what a loss he is, 90 years old, you know, lovely to live that long.
But what a legacy he leaves in the world of
they
music.
talk about Brian Epstein being the 5th Beatle. He might have been the 6th Beatle, perhaps, because George Martin really was the 5th Beatle.
And he was also known as an absolute gentleman. Everyone who knew him just loved him.
Yeah.
He wasn't ruthless, he really was a wonderful,
great
man.
listener. It's lovely to see. There was a few documentaries on him last night, and I was watching the deference he showed to the artists as well, and taking them seriously. He wasn't patronising at all. It was lovely. What a good man.
Yeah, and what a
Good
great
man.
opportunity for people who probably don't know that much about the Beatles' history and what Sir George Martin did. Lovely opportunity for people to explore that as well. A lot of people getting in touch on Twitter saying they're learning a lot about just what he did for the music industry. Jackie, what's on the back pages today?
Well, Maria's still on the back pages in many papers. The Mirror headline is "No Mates, No Mercy." Chris Evert's come out and said that female players are not really stepping up to back Maria Sharapova because she's got no friends in the game. Martina Navratilova said, "I didn't believe her explanation for failing a drugs test." And Everett says that Maria's always isolated herself from the rest of the tennis world, and that's true. She is a kind of like a sort of an icy figure, and she hasn't got any really close friends on the tour. And when you have tough times in your life, you kind of find out who your friends are, and she's kind of finding out in the tennis world that maybe she doesn't really have that many because she keeps her friends in another part of her life.
Although she did say that she was getting a lot of love and support via email from her fans, which is ironic considering she got in trouble for not opening an
And
email.
Serena Williams did come out and say she was courageous. It's interesting, Jackie, because I met with her last year and did a programme on her, and I asked her about the reputation that she's icy, she doesn't have friends, and she said, well, I'm not in it to make friends, I'm here to play tennis. So she made it very clear from a young age that she actually didn't want to make friends on the circuit.
Okay, right, let's take... Well, it turns out it might be, yeah.
It's a bit like that song, you know, once I was 7 years old and my mum told me to make friends, otherwise I'd be lonely.
No, she was absolutely
She might be listening to that on
Yeah,
loop
listening
today.
to that, yeah.
Right, let's get an update on the weather and find out if that's going to be icy today. Here's Isabel.